Welcome to The Ripple Effect, the Mediaocean podcast exploring the trends shaping modern advertising and the ripple effects they create across media, tech, business, and culture. In this episode, Mediaocean's CMO Aaron Goldman sits down with Debra Aho Williamson, the founder and chief analyst at Sonata Insights and author of the AI Ad Economy on Substack. They explore what happens when AI becomes a media channel in its own right, and how it won't just change where ads appear, it will also reshape how consumers discover information, how brands engage audiences, and how the advertising ecosystem operates as a whole. Here's Aaron and Debra.
Welcome to The Ripple Effect. I'm Aaron Goldman and excited to talk about AI as a media channel with Debra Aho Williamson, founder and chief analyst of Sonata Insights. Debbie also is the author of the AI Ad Economy newsletter on Substack. And, everyone's talking about how AI generated content and AI agents are being used in media and advertising, but there's not enough discussion about AI as a media and advertising channel itself. ChatGPT is forecasting $100 billion in ad spend by 2030. So the ripple effects of that are going to be enormous. And so we're going to get into where those budgets are coming from, how those ads will perform, what's the role of ad tech in those environments, and how's it going to transform the experience on the AI platforms themselves. So we're going to take this sort of in 4 parts and then get all the way down to the sort of the downstream consequences of the potential for AI to become effectively the largest media channel of all time. So let's start with the consumer lens. So AI is clearly changing how people get their information and live their lives. So in your sense, how are their expectations changing when it comes to what AI can do for them?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me out here with you. It's so fun to talk about this because I know we've talked about it a lot on LinkedIn and other places. So, I really feel like AI media and the idea of consumers using AI platforms, the more and more people do it, the more likely it is that they're going to be changing their behavior as far as researching, getting information, and making purchase decisions. And these are fundamental differences. These platforms are unlike any other media we have ever seen before. They're conversational, they're informative, they're educational, they're personal, they're all these things, and they are just unbelievable places to interact and engage and to learn. And so I feel like consumers, once they start to use these platforms, research something, find something they want to buy, figure out where they want to travel, that's going to become a more and more likely behavior over time. Now, they're not necessarily going to go away completely from traditional platforms. We're still going to see people using search, people using social, people visiting traditional websites. But I think that these AI platforms are going to be just more and more important in parts of people's lives over time.
Yeah. And, for background, we should let folks know, you've seen the waves of this, right? So you were covering social, back when it first sort of took off. So you've seen how technology can come in and kind of change the way people access information, get entertainment, et cetera. What do you think is unique about this moment here with AI compared to the first wave of search and then social and then and mobile and all that came since?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is how quickly it's happening.
Yeah,
and how quickly things are changing. When you think about the fact that 2022 was when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT, and how many years has it been? Less than 4 years since that has come onto the scene. And that's all we want to talk about these days is what are people doing in these platforms and how are they using them and what does it mean for the marketing industry? When you look back on search, it took 6 years from the launch of the very first websites to Google introducing advertising on the platform, which really started to change it as a marketing vehicle. And social, same thing. Social people were using social media and blogs and things like that, but it took a long time for them to take off.
Yeah.
And for platforms like Facebook to become really, really huge. So the speed at which this is happening is probably the most profound thing for me right now.
And of course, so it's a podcast, of course for audio, but we'll be on YouTube as well with the video so folks can see the background. We're in Cannes for the Lions Advertising Festival of Creativity. And so against that backdrop, quite literally, advertising, the way that brands engage their audiences, engage their consumers. We're here to, just celebrate that. But of course, there's also this, undertone of like how AI is changing that whole dynamic. And people themselves, everyone has their own personal relationship with their AI platforms of choice. And it ranges anywhere from I trust it completely, and whatever answer comes out, I will, take it and accept it and run with it, to, a healthy dose of skepticism to some people who aren't even fully adopting it yet. And when we think about again, back to, the first few waves of search and social and mobile, as people started to, make that a part of their lives, change the way they connect with other people, of course, get their entertainment. One thing that I pay attention to, and I see it myself in my own usage, is there almost becomes a reliance, a habit that starts to form. And so you start to work it into your day to day. And so where do you think like the consumer behavior is changing? Are people spending more time with these AI platforms at the expense of, what we know as kind of classic search? Where do you see that like time and energy spent with AI platforms coming from?
Honestly, and if you listen to companies like OpenAI talk about it, they don't want people to spend a lot of time.
Right.
Believe it or not, they're like, unlike social, where it's like maximize the amount of time, right? But keep scrolling that feed. It's not feed based, and they want people to be able to get things done quicker. So they want to make your life more efficient. So that is one of the most fundamental differences. They're not maximizing your time. They're actually trying to minimize your time and make it so that you can, as a consumer, come in, get your question answered, and go on with your day.
Yeah.
I had a great experience actually just here a couple of days ago where I thought I had an eye infection. I don't, thankfully, but I thought I had an eye infection. I woke up one morning and I said, I saw issues. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, what do I do? Here are my symptoms. And it knew that I was in CAN because we'd had a conversation about CAN. It said you should go to a pharmacist because the pharmacist can actually help diagnose. And here, by the way, is the French sentence you need to use to describe your issue. So that's what I did is I went to the pharmacy down the street and I showed them from ChatGPT the sentence and they gave me some medication. Turns out I didn't need it. But the point was within 5 minutes or less of conversation, I had a solution to my problem and I had a path towards solving what I thought was going to be a problem.
Yeah. And so that's a great point too. So yes, they're not optimizing for time spent. Although my experience has always been, there's always that follow-up question so here's your answer. And it's would you like me to?
Yes, of course.
But I think that's all on the purpose of giving you the best answer rather than keeping you on the platform for an unlimited amount of time so that we can show you more ads.
Yes.
But now, of course, with ChatGPT introducing ads, how do you see that changing? How do you see the platforms kind of managing that balance between making sure that the consumer gets exactly what they're looking for with trying to monetize that attention?
Yeah. We spend a lot of time talking about ChatGPT because they are the new entrant. They're the shiny new toy in the advertising ecosystem right now. But other platforms, Google has advertising in its AI features. Microsoft does too. So, I think that for all of this, you have to do it with care. Because people have been already conditioned to see and interact with these AI platforms and get an organic response that they might likely trust. Yes, there's hallucinations. Yes, there's misinformation or wrong information. We all have to accept that these aren't perfect. But there's a line where people, going back to the dawn of advertising, if you ever ask somebody, do you want more advertising or do you want to see advertising? Not necessarily. People would typically say no. But then if you turn the question around and say, well, if an advertiser or if a company were able to give you an offer, or something like that, would you be okay with that? And then suddenly everybody's like, ding, of course.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the advertising fits into these platforms. So you are, you're having a conversation back and forth, you're getting information. Maybe you see an ad that's helpful. Maybe you see an ad that's perfectly timed to the situation and to what you're looking for. Great example, I was shopping for a frying pan for my parents for a gift a couple of months ago. I knew exactly what I wanted. It was the Made In nonstick. Made In is an amazing brand. I don't work for them, but just to say, Made In nonstick pans. I knew what size I wanted. All I wanted to know was where to buy it for the best price. At that moment, an ad for a 20% discount, free shipping, something like that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
that would have been the thing that I wanted to see. So I think that there's a way to incorporate advertising into this so that it doesn't feel like it's bolted on or that it's something that people were going to rebel against.
Yeah. And so let's dig in a little there too, because when you think about the ad formats, of course, what we're seeing now is early testing, and I'm sure it's going to evolve. But to your point, even, if we think back to when Google first introduced ads, and it was just another blue link that sort of looked and felt like organic content. It was keyword based. So depending on what you were searching on, you were getting an answer that was presumably relevant to what you were searching for. And so if we think about what we have today with the early testing on ChatGPT and other AI platforms to what it can become, what do you think that best experience is going to be like? And, do you see it, how do you see that evolving over time? Like, are we going to get to the point where we're going to see, full like video ads, in the middle of your conversation with your AI platform of choice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now the ads look very much like search ads. They're a little bit snazzier than search ads, but essentially it's picture, headline, a little bit of text. And I think that's by design. I think that's because advertisers, that's what they're used to, right? And it's very easy for the companies to say, okay, well, take what you're doing in search and just kind of bolt it over to our platform. You have to understand, though, then that this isn't necessarily keyword based.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's really interesting. So it's very conversational. So you have to actually start to optimize. Instead of optimizing towards keywords, you optimize towards sentiment and what people are saying, of the conversation and the words that people are using as they're talking. So, but I think this is only the first part of the advertising that we're going to see on all of these platforms. It's so early days. I think we'll see video advertising. I think we'll see other interesting forms of advertising we probably haven't even thought about yet.
Totally. I mean, if you think about what your AI agent of choice knows about you and the potential to turn that into commercial messaging, clearly, like it's unlimited. I think the question becomes, and we could even, like, if you think about video platforms, like Netflix is a great example of, a company that at first it was, subscription only. And at some point it's like, okay, we've maxed out on the amount of revenue we can make from charging people $9.99 a month. Mm-hmm. We can bump it up to $12.99. But at some point, okay, now we're going to bring in advertising to make it more affordable to everyone. There'll be an ad tier and a subscription tier. Figure that same model is going to, apply in the world of AI. And you can bring in these different formats, especially once, you have, whether it's commerce happening within AI platforms, I think entertainment's going to be a big part of what people bring in. I expect there to be like a video player where you would like consume content. And then of course, video ads can serve as, a format in that environment. What I think, when we think about that sort of like ripple effect and again, what it knows about you, let's shift into like the ad tech ecosystem, because with every other channel, you've got folks who help everything from like developing the creative that gets seen to actually then delivering and serving the ad, measure, tracking it, and optimizing it. How do you sort of see that all playing out? ChatGPT now with launching ads, it started to bring in some ad tech partners. How do you see sort of that ecosystem blossoming around it?
Yeah. It's been really interesting to see, OpenAI, make these partnerships. So it has agency partnerships, it has ad tech partnerships, and it has creative partners as well. And they say that this is part of being a good player in the ecosystem, and working with people who have strong capabilities that it doesn't necessarily have. And I think that's great. I think that having these companies to help at the beginning makes it easier. Certainly makes it easier for advertisers, right? So if you're already working with an agency that's a partner with OpenAI, or already working with an ad tech company that's a partner with OpenAI, it makes it an easier path for you to go, oh, okay, this is where we want to, this is an okay place, it's safe, it feels safe, right? The thing that I always worry about and we've seen this in other digital transformations in the past, is that over time, maybe the large platform decides that they've learned enough from their partners. And so there's always a risk, right? You have to go into it with open eyes if you're an ad tech or whoever, that at some point, perhaps this platform that you have started to rely on is going to change something that makes it less likely for you to be able to do business.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, it's so early days, maybe this will not happen, but, we have precedent. Certainly I covered social at eMarketer for a long time. I saw the things that over time that Meta did, and to change the way that publishers work with it, to change the way that advertisers work with it. So I just feel like any company that goes into a partnership, just needs to do it with their eyes open.
Yeah.
And it's learning. It's learning for both sides, I think.
Totally. I mean, the phrase walled gardens comes from, the idea that at some point the walls go up and you kind of close things off and everyone has to operate, inside, to your specifications. And I think CTV kind of gave a formula to what a balance can look like between, each sort of publisher creating unique opportunities within their ecosystem, but also keeping things open and interoperable to kind of get the best of both worlds. I've heard it called hedge gardens, or, and I really think and hope that becomes the model here, because there's value that different platforms can bring in by plugging in, again, across that full sort of create, deliver, measure, optimize framework. And when you kind of play that out, I think, and you actually covered this in your newsletter, there was recent research, maybe with Sensor Tower, that said, ChatGPT has 1,400 advertisers right now, which is great adoption for something that's recently launched, but a long way to go to get to the millions that, Meta, Google, Amazon have. Yeah. But as that grows, there's a shortcut to scale, which is like, get demand through partners. And then the long term, of course, is you want to get to every mom and pop small business to be able to, get a credit card, go in, start to buy some ads. And it's kind of it's a virtuous cycle. The more advertisers that come on, the more opportunities you as the platform have to match the perfect brand, the perfect message with the right time for the consumer based on what they're looking for. And of course, that's what's made, Google and these other platforms so phenomenal. So how do we get from where we are today? And most importantly, so if we've covered, the impact on consumers, on ad tech platforms and on the AI platforms themselves, let's talk about for the advertiser themselves that's thinking about, okay, when's the right time to test with AI media? And how do I think about what AI media, what role does that play in my media mix? How are you thinking about that for brands and marketers? Yeah,
absolutely. And so, yes, so AI media, thank you for using that phrase, because that is a term that I'm trying to popularize to describe this type of advertising. So we think about social media, think about retail media. Now we have AI media. I feel like, basically every advertiser should be thinking about how they can test a platform like ChatGPT at this point, because it's an amazing learning experience about a totally new way to advertise. And learning about this is just, I think, the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, though, there are other platforms out there, right? So the difference being, though, like if you're an advertiser working with Google or with Microsoft, you're not necessarily getting to decide that your ads get to appear in AI. You just sort of optimize them, and then the platform itself decides whether your ads appear in like AI overviews or AI mode. But as far as categories of advertisers, I think one of the interesting things, and you referenced the Sensor Tower study that I wrote about. So Sensor Tower's database showed, like you mentioned, 1,400 advertisers that it had tracked so far in the U.S. on Android, delivered to Android devices in the past 3 months, which is a huge increase. It's like double from the past 2 months ago. But one of the other interesting findings from that research was that I saw in the database was that 40% of the ad impressions were from retailers. And so retail is becoming one of the most common platforms already on a ChatGPT. And I think it's because there's so much product research that's happening there, and also in Gemini, also in Copilot, that sort of thing. So I feel like that if you're a retailer, you certainly need to be involved there, because figuring out new ways to market products, maybe it's an extension of your retail media even. These are placements. You could call them off-site placements in some way, right? But then, from there, travel companies, I think a very obvious entrant, electronics, those kinds of companies. I think health is going to be interesting. There's some regulations around that, but I think so many people use platforms to research, health conditions. like my potential eye infection, that I think that those kinds of companies will have a very interesting run there.
And how do you think, what should they be holding AI media to in terms of like KPIs? Is it truly full funnel? Like, are there ways to build brand in this environment all the way down through direct response?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of what we think about right now is that this is mid-funnel.
Yeah.
So this is research. So this is learning. This is getting exposed to something and learning more about it. Like, you're curious. Hey, I want to buy a new mountain bike. Tell me about the features. And then you kind of go down a rabbit hole and you learn more and more about what it is that you want to buy. But the really cool thing is that these AI platforms have the capability to take you all the way from brand awareness to that purchase.
Yeah.
I've had multiple times where I've been introduced, and this is on an organic sense, so not with an ad, but through the organic side, just prompting, where I've been introduced to a product for the very first time and gone on to purchase it, within like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential.
It's full funnel. It's a collapsed funnel, to your point, right? Things that might have taken, days, weeks across multiple platforms to get to a decision now, are happening inside one conversation. And that opportunity is great. I also think we're, to your point, it's early days, right? So the most important thing is for just brands to get in there, test and learn, try it, sort of figure it out for yourself, but it's going to evolve over time. And if we think about the way we interface with these agents today, that's going to change as well. If you think, OpenAI bought Johnny Ive's company, and we don't know exactly what they're building, but we assume it's some kind of wearable, and it's going to change the way you sort of interact and are able to use, in this case, ChatGPT, but other companies too. Snap just launched their new spectacles. Of course, Meta's got their AR glasses, whether it's Meta Ray-Bans or the Oakleys. So all the companies are coming up with new hardware and ways to interface with the world and bring your sort of conversation into it. And then sort of fast forward that to the advertising, like that becomes AI media, right? As you sort of define this category, how do you think about taking, because marketers like to have everything like in a nice, neat box. So I know exactly where that fits in my marketing plan and my media budget.
Yes.
How do you think people should be thinking about AI media as a category, knowing that how we know it today is likely to evolve over time?
The question of the moment.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm an analyst, and this is why I love this space, because it's also new. Where you're literally defining what this category is as it grows. Right now, I'm defining it as advertising in AI-infused platforms or experiences, which can be very broad. I mean, like you mentioned, it could be, AI glasses.
Yeah. But also certainly through Gemini, even, AI search through Google could be AI media,
for
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And there could be no limit. And which to your point then the question becomes, and it's a very viable question, TBD how we answer it, is that does AI media just become part of media? Is everything eventually AI infused in some way? And so now we are just talking about it as media. It's part of our media.
In much the same way that digital has become. When the internet first came around, we needed to have, a defined bucket. We had specialists, we had entire ecosystem, we had agencies all crop up focused on, digital advertising. And then at some point, it just became advertising, and the digital teams moved in, to the broader teams. But it is helpful in those early formative days to have that specialization, have that focus, so that people, understand, all right, this is something I need to think about a little differently. And then to your point, yes, at some time it just becomes part of everything else you're doing.
Right.
But let's bring it full circle. We're here in Cannes, and so I guess the question is do you see us, next year, 5 years, 10 years, will there become will someone win a Cannes Lion for excellence in AI media?
Well, I think that on the creative side, yes. There will be AI. We haven't talked about AI generated creative or advertising, but I do think that there will be awards for AI generated. It's controversial. There's a lot of debate that the industry needs to have about what the role of AI is in the creative process. But I think that AI is going to be a tool that most creatives are going to use over time. And it'll probably be just as simple and easy as using Photoshop or CGI As far as media placements, I mean, I guess what I would say is maybe a few years from now we see other companies. Maybe OpenAI has a yacht here in a year or two. They don't this year, but maybe next year, maybe the years following, they have their own yacht and they're doing a much splashier presence here.
Yeah, well, we'll stay tuned for that. I think the ripple effects are clearly going to be felt far and wide throughout the ecosystem. We just started to peel like one layer off that onion. We could probably go on for much longer on some of these others, but I would just maybe this is a chance for me to plug your newsletter for folks who want to stay on top of this. It's the AI Ad Economy on Substack, and Debbie's doing a great job covering this and really like leading folks into this brave new world of AI media. So I think we'll put a pin in it here for now. Thank you for joining me, Debbie. This was great.
Thank you.
And let's do it again next year.
All right. Sounds good.
Cheers.
You're listening to the Mediaocean Podcast Network. For more of our shows, visit www.mediaocean.com/podcasts.